Well, I don't know if they're currently doing it now, but they have a social worker with the RCMP officers to go to wellness checks.
Yes, they're running a pilot program. Yes.
Yeah. And I was kind of curious about that because they did that already. So I'm not so sure why they call it a pilot program. But when Superintendent Critchlow was here, they did the exact same thing. And it was sponsored by the province. And I remember the superintendent at the time said that they reduced, what was it? They have 100 hours a month of officers sitting in the hospital waiting for the person to be released, 3 hours each call. And when they had the social worker there, they only made 20 hours was needed. So they reduced it by that much, the huge, huge savings. But they never did anything with it. And then now, years later, they're doing the exact same thing. So I guess this is why I kind of wonder if they have something like that. And I remember asking the superintendent, why don't you hire some social workers? And they say, well, that's not our responsibility.
So there's two things there. It's quite accurate. The time spent in the emerge department, you're accurate. It was often two officers with someone that they were trying to protect them from harm, and so they were in the hospital. And one of the problems were that they were spending an enormous amount of time in overtime, trying to backfill the officers that were sitting in the hospital. And where the solution became out of this situation of increased overtime between Vitalité and Horizon was that the security in the institutions was not sufficient. And it stemmed from the staff in Emerge not feeling safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so when two officers were sitting with somebody in the Emerge department, they felt safe. And so often they would be there for 3 hours. And at the end of 3 hours, it was mandated you had to release the officers. And by having conversations with everyone involved, Horizon and Vitalité have changed the way their security is. It's made it safer for their employees. They've created a different way in which a patient that is arriving with an RCMP officer doesn't go into the emergency department normal waiting room anymore. There's a separate conduit. So that in of itself saved a tremendous amount of hours because now they bring the patient in. The staff are not worried about their security
Mm-hmm.
and the officers can leave. The mental health or the social worker, I agree 100%. It was a pilot project way back when because the province decided to put funds towards it. And again, they didn't necessarily continue the funding. That needs to continue. And those are the conversations that we have to have that, okay, we as a municipality are not responsible for social work and to hire social workers, but it's important for us, for our municipality. So we need to figure out conversations we had with the province to say, well, this is good for us. So how do we work together? And
Yeah.
that's really what it's about.
Because in the end of the day, like you said, it is responsibility of the citizens, of Moncton. And if you can sadly pay for two social workers, perhaps for the price of one RCMP officer, give or take. So you get more bang for your buck by having. So even if the city's paying for it, maybe it's not within their realm. I think it is something that perhaps the city should consider anyway, because they won't necessarily need to have as many officers. But okay,
Yeah, yes, and I don't disagree, but there's always that creep where if you start to do too much, then all of a sudden you're paying for things that are,
well,
But on
yeah,
the other hand, I agree. But it's about having those conversations and saying, okay, we need it. So let's just make it happen.
okay.
And maybe it's 50-50.
Let's look at the prevention side of things now, just momentarily. Someone had given a stat. Now, I have no idea. I didn't look it up, but they said 55% of the homeless people come from the foster care system. And one reason is that when they get to 19 years of age, of course, they age out of the system and they really have nowhere to go. And then things can kind of go sideways. So would you, as mayor, want to look at to see if it's possible to hire, like to kind of be able to track who's coming out of the system and offer them work within the maintenance department or somewhere or something like that to get them gainfully employed out of the gate?
I think as a municipality, we should work with our businesses in our community to make that happen. I think if from a municipal perspective, I would encourage that as well. I think it's it's a collaboration of all of our businesses, not just the municipality, but the municipality could certainly lead, and certainly would make a big difference. Sometimes the challenges are how you put the program like that together to deliver it, but certainly very, very open to something like that.
Okay. And also on the prevention side is kids. I remember talking to the superintendent of the Anglophone East School District a long time ago, and he said, just anecdotally, he says around 10, 12 years old is where kids seem to kind of get off the rails, because that's the age where parents may be getting divorced or things may be happening in their family. He says, we just could scoop them up at that age and hold on to them, that they probably would end up a whole lot better. There are things like the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters. The question I received from someone was, would you make a commitment to perhaps investing more into things like Atlantic Wellness, Boys and Girls Clubs, that sort of thing, to kind of help the kids get over that hump?
Absolutely. It's extremely important. And sometimes, we have other priorities, but I think it's investing in your future, investing in the kids, and certainly, absolutely.
Okay. And the last one, because we talked a fair amount already, the other questions had to do with crime, but we kind of, I think, covered that well enough. Looking back, like big picture stuff, what would you like to be able to do when you're walking on the beach, long since retired, and say, I did that, and I'm glad I did for the city of Moncton? Is there any kind of big picture thing you'd like to say? I'd like to hang your hat on something.
I think my goal is always to leave something better than when I first started. And so for me, it won't be about a particular project and so on. It's having done my best to leave the city in the best position that it possibly can for the future. And I get a lot of satisfaction in trying to facilitate different projects and things, but overall it's just leaving it better than you saw it when you first arrived, and that will be what, to me, will be how I feel.
Nice. I know I said that was the last one, but I just remembered something that somebody had said at the end, and I was surprised that nobody had brought it up previously. But around active transportation or public transportation, there's a lot of talk about that now, a lot of push to do that. Some of it is just not necessarily practical, some of it is. What are your thoughts on active transportation and public transportation?
Well, both are extremely important. I think for active transportation, we really need to sit down and make some connections that are missing. We've made an effort to put bike lanes, for example, but you're riding a bike on St. George Boulevard, you don't feel safe in that bike lane. There's nothing between you and the vehicle. So we need to really consciously say, okay, how do we slow traffic speeds down? How do we put barrier between somebody on a bicycle or even on the sidewalk, for that matter? So those things we have to do, and we, I think, are in a better position now because we last year invested in a small piece of equipment that can actually clear the snow between a physical barrier and, let's say, the sidewalk where the bike trail is. So we can be innovative. We can look at what other municipalities do. We just got to take it seriously. There are some challenges with active transportation with some of those connections, but let's do the things that we currently do and make people safe. For public transportation, we need to really ramp that up, and we need to, we're seeing how the increase in ridership has ballooned. And, we need to plan further ahead because it's difficult to get buses and so on. But I applaud staff. I mean, they've been being, very resourceful and trying to add buses, and they're trying to, make things happen better. But we're going to have to probably have some serious conversations too on how do you make, if you go to Halifax, there are dedicated bus lanes, and they move traffic a lot easier. And how do we, eventually go to that? I think the city is still young at the moment, and it takes a while for people to get their head around. It took a long time to try to understand and really be on board with bike lanes, even trails for that matter. But we'll get there. And I think it's part of what makes a city livable, the quality of life, why people want to live here. And it's not all about your shiny projects, whether it's a convention center or a market. It's about what it brings to all of us. And, and finally, the riverfront's extremely important, and we need to really move forward on maximizing that. And some of the things you can do, you can add lighting, you can make it visually more appealing. And those are the things that, sometimes we forget. I'll give an example. They're repairing and making modifications to the fountain that's in front of City Hall. And that's, to me, a gem. And the one with the deer next to it. But yet, a few years ago, it was in pretty rough shape, and the thought process, well, maybe, it's the end of its life. No, we need to really be embracing some of these things and saying, okay, how do we beautify it? How do we make Oak Lane look a lot nicer than it currently is? And so on. So, and Main Street's a mess. And it looks horrible. I'm sorry, but it really does. And it needs new asphalt. It needs some tender loving care. And those are things that we need to really be the drivers on as mayor and council, and just make it happen. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay, and I know that was the last one. This is maybe the super last one. These are all good ideas, but how are they going to be paid for?
Well, you know what? It's like anything else. You've got a long list of things. You create first your priorities, and you chip away at it. And we can do that. It's not about taking all of this all at once. We do it now in terms of our capital plans. We do capital plans over 5 years, so we can map that out. But there are some things that are going to be, to me, much more important. And I always use this example. When I travel, where's the first place that you go when you get into a city? Well, normally you go close to where City Hall is, the library, so on. So that really should be shiny. Ours needs a little shining up, I would say.
It needs rather large chamois.
Well, yeah. So, but let's start. And a good start was we did a section as part of the road construction. There's a new section of sidewalk on Westmoreland. And you look at those blocks, very similar to what was done at Downing in front of the library. And I mean, that is more visually appealing. And that's where we need to go. Because then if you feel, that the space looks nice, it really changes the way you feel about things. Yeah. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah, no, when the city went to the Cities in Bloom and started planting flowers everywhere, I mean, that was just, it was amazing what a transformation it was just to add that color. It made things so much more appealing and nicer, yeah.
And when we do things like that, we have to continue them. We can't just stop them.
No, true enough.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're so close to the end now, but before we do, is there anything else that wasn't covered that you would like to mention?
Maybe one thing. I'm surprised that, because we've been speaking an awful lot lately about bilingualism, about the fact that, we benefit so much from the fact that we have a Francophone and Anglophone population. I'm just surprised that it didn't come up. I certainly feel that we need to be, as a city, more involved in trying to promote bilingualism, promote the use of both languages. And I think it's important too in terms of even being able to speak French and to be able to converse with, a significant size of our population is Francophone. In fact, we have a larger Francophone population than all of Dieppe that is viewed really as a Francophone community. So I was just surprised, but I think that that's a focus that, as a city, we need to maintain. And certainly when we look at our partnerships of the city with organizations and so on, we have to make sure too that we help them deliver bilingual services to those who wish to be served in the language of their choice.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.